William Daroff, shalom.
Shalom, good to be here.
Thank you for coming. You are the CEO of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. You're here preparing also for a delegation that's going to be coming. Tell us about this delegation.
So the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations for the 49th year is coming to Israel for our National Leadership Mission. We've been here every year for the last 50 years, except for during COVID, when we weren't here in 2021, in order to meet with the government, in order to engage with the people of Israel. And the mission this year, where we'll have around 50 or 60 American Jewish leaders, will be very much engaged with the post-October 7th Israel.
Right. This is a special meaning, special significance for this time.
Absolutely. Usually when we do these missions, we're in a hotel ballroom hearing from one politician or government official after another. This year we're going to be very much in the field. We're going to Hadassah Hospital to meet with injured soldiers. We're going south to be with the Eshkol region, with the mayor and the council there. We're going to Nir Oz to hug the survivors and to see firsthand. We're going to the Nova site to be there with survivors from the Nova Music Festival. Again, in order to bear witness, in order to see for ourselves, and just as importantly, to express the concern and the love of the American Jewish people for the people of Israel.
Right, so it's also about solidarity, but also I think it's important for Israelis to understand that October 7th was a tragedy for Jews around the world. Tell us about the feelings, since we're 4 months after, the feelings of something happened and trauma.
The trauma is tremendous here in Israel and in world Jewry. In America, we have sort of the double punch of seeing what happened here on October 7th and experiencing what happened to our brothers and sisters here. And then in the days after October 7th, the second punch of having the spike in anti-Semitism, to have people who we thought were our allies and our friends who just have not had our backs. And that double punch of not just having sort of the fundamental ground beneath our feet shaken by October 7th here, but then shaken more by this insecurity around the world. It's been traumatic.
Were you also moved by the support, the hug, the emotions that came from the White House, from Washington to Israel? We of course remember the statements by the president himself. Were you moved?
Very moved, as were the people of Israel. In that first week, when, again, the ground had come out from beneath us all, to have President Biden stand up and speak as emotionally as he did was incredibly important, and something that I think helped Israel crawl out from the first days of this tragedy. I remember seeing news coverage of people at the Mossad and Shin Bet crying while they were watching his speech, really seeing that the leader of the free world in his kishkas felt the pain that all of Israel was feeling.
And at this point, today, we're talking about something that is probably a bit more complex in terms of the pressures that are coming from Washington, in terms of how much Israel should be fighting, ceasefire, the humanitarian aid. Whenever we ask government officials, they're saying the United States want us to bring in the humanitarian aid. We will do so. Now there's, of course, the question through UNRWA or not. Is the United States interfering too much at this point?
I think that the American support for Israel is unprecedented. The amount of support that the White House is giving to Israel as it relates in the international community, the United Nations and other international bodies, as it relates to the tachlis of conducting the war, the bullets, the missiles, the rockets, is something that, as well as the moral support that this president has given to Israel, is something that is unprecedented, and that in concert with America putting itself out there, the president feels like there needs to be, in order to support Israel in international fora, Israel needs to move forward to ensure humanitarian aid for civilians who are in Gaza, that a 5-month-old baby shouldn't starve because of the outrageous, barbaric actions of the Hamas terrorists under whom that baby lives. And so as far as prosecuting the war with international support, having a recognition that turning Gaza into a parking lot would not help satisfy those goals, I think is reasonable and smart, and is fitting with Jewish values that a 5-month-old baby or a 5-year-old baby.
And that brings us, of course, to the debate regarding UNRWA, and we know that Israel is going to try to change the direction or the way, the method that the humanitarian aid is given. Regarding the hostage deal.
And I salute President Biden for suspending the aid to UNRWA. That is, given the climate in the international development community and the outcry of concern in the international community for civilians in Gaza, the fact that the president was able to look at this information and see what many of us have known for a long time, that UNRWA is a corrupt bastion of Israel haters and Hamas lovers, I think is important. And the fact that a dozen or so other Western countries have come behind the United States to support the suspension of aid to UNRWA, I think speaks to the seriousness with which these issues are being taken.
Now, regarding the hostage deal, we're hearing all the reports. Do you think that America understands, the United States understands Israel in terms of saying no to some of the offers, some of the requests and demands from the Hamas? We know that the United States doesn't negotiate with terror. Israel is always expected to. We know that we had the Shalit deal. Do you think that the United States supports Israel being strong in front of all the demands of the Hamas? For example, the demand to end the war?
My sense is that the United States recognizes that this is a decision for Israel to make and for Israel alone to make. They certainly will provide advice and guidance. But for instance, with this deal, as of this moment that we're taping, we don't know all the specifics of it. President Biden was quoted as saying that some of the Hamas demands were far out there, I think was his quote, which I think is indicative that obviously he knows more than you and I know sitting here now, but I think it's indicative that there is a reality engaged here where America recognizes that a price wherein 10,000 Sinwars will be released would be a very difficult decision for Israel to make.
Now, another issue that is bothering many Israelis is the fact that the United States, the official United States, came out with sanctions against 4 Israelis, Jewish residents of Judea and Samaria. These are sanctions that we've seen against Iranians, Russians, Israelis.
So I think that the issuing of the executive order was a mistake. I think principally it was a mistake because the way that it was worded and the way that it's been framed is that it gives some sort of moral equivalency between these lawless acts of vigilantism and Hamas terror. They are proportionally much different. Thousands of Israelis dead from Hamas terror. That's not the case in the territories as it relates to these acts of vigilante justice. That being said, the so-called settler violence, this vigilante justice, is against the law. It is something that should be stopped, and Israel should do all it can do to ensure that those acts are prosecuted. That being said, the 4 people that you mentioned who were sanctioned were in fact convicted by Israeli courts. So we know that they were guilty because we believe in the Israeli judicial system.
But leave it to the Israeli judicial system.
Well, that's if they had taken 4 people who the Israeli judicial system had exonerated, that would be different. Here are 4 people that the Israeli government has said, the Israeli courts have said, did bad things, and the United States is saying, okay, you've convicted them. We believe that, therefore, there should be conditions. Now, news reports have indicated that the U.S. government looked at hundreds of people to sanction. The fact that they only picked 4, I think, speaks to this being a narrow executive order that's meant to send a signal to the international community that the U.S. will ensure and put its thumb on the scale to make sure that Israel does the right thing, a signal to the Gulf states as we look towards some sort of agreement with the Saudis that the U.S. can have influence on Israel, and a signal to Israel that we're watching.
You know how the things are on ground. You're familiar with Judea and Samaria, with residents, with
Yes.
settlers, as they like to call them. Settler violence? This is a media campaign that has gone out of proportions.
Well, that's, as I said, I think the executive order was ill-timed and disproportionate, but the fact that it's narrowly focused on these 4 individuals who are already convicted of crimes, I hope, and I think speaks to the narrow way that this executive order will be moved forward. And again, the audience being the Israeli government saying, please watch this, and the international community in the Gulf states so that they see, even if, as you say, it's propaganda, Al Jazeera is reporting it. It has impact on the Gulf states and the Arab world and how they see Israel. And so to have America step in here and say, you know, we understand this and we're engaged, I think could move the ball forward. Again, I'm hopeful that this is very limited. It's a one-day story and focused on people who've already been convicted of crimes, but we'll see how it plays out.
According to a report in Axios by Barak Ravid, Washington, the White House were looking into the option of sanctions also against ministers Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Do you find yourself explaining to officials in Washington that these two represent a big part of society, people who go according to law, who live a normal life? I mean, do you find yourself confronting people on these issues, on these, defining these two, Ben Gvir and Smotrich?
I think it speaks to the limited nature of the executive order that it only includes these 4 convicted Israelis and doesn't have a wider swath of Israelis, including ministers. I think that it was very deliberate to sort of pinpoint and focus these sanctions in that way.
Now, how do you see the words written by Ben Gvir, or he answered a question to an interview, talking against the president, also comparing him to President Donald Trump?
So I'll note that Minister Ben Gvir tweeted, we don't call it tweeting anymore, he X'd yesterday that President Biden is a friend of Israel. I would just note that that's out there. As far as his other comments, I've been involved in U.S.-Israel relations for a while, and this is not the first time that a minister of government has spoken in a way different than his prime minister or his foreign minister. For just about every government I've been engaged with, the prime ministers have tried to focus the U.S.-Israel relationship on them and not have other ministers speak out. And along the way, in my memory, at least going back to the Sharon government, there are always people who are speaking out of school. And so this is not out of the ordinary for a minister to not be speaking from the talking points of the government. That being said, I think his comments are unhelpful. President Biden's support for Israel, like that of every American president, which is indicative of the fundamental strength of the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, is strong. And so President Biden's support for Israel is something that I think we should be heralding and giving positive reinforcement to, particularly given the pressure that he's getting from the far left of his party and from the international community. I note that Shas leader Aryeh Deri tweeted in response to Ben Gvir. The Prime Minister spoke in response to Minister Ben Gvir. So I think the government is in the right place, and sure, some ministers occasionally will speak out, but as Minister Ben Gvir did, the following day he gave President Biden a hug and called him a friend.
Now, it could be that the biggest confrontation is still ahead regarding the day after, regarding the pressures that we're going to see from the United States, that basically the result of October 7th will be the creation of a Palestinian state. Can you imagine that?
I've spoken at length to my government, to your government, about these issues. I think that there is a couple points. One, there is a feeling that for President Biden to push forward in support of Israel, that what happens after the war, God willing soon, that the situation on the ground will be different than it was on October 6th. That there is some aspirational direction to take the relationship between Israel and her neighbors and the Palestinians in a positive direction, where there is, again, some sort of direction that will not have us and you just revert to October 6th. I think that having that vision is important for the international community, and again, it's important for the Gulf states. And as I mentioned before, there is this discussion happening as we speak with the Saudis and others that's important. So I think I understand why they're trying to show a horizon of a future. That being said, I've expressed to our government that the Israeli people, having been here, I was here on October 7th, and this is my third trip since, are in no place mentally for a Palestinian state. From left to right, there is no one here who believes that the timing is right. And then if you look at the Palestinians, if you look at the polling data from the territories and from Gaza, the vast, vast majority of the Palestinian public is supportive of October 7th. indicative that the Palestinian people are not ready to be in a place to live in harmony with Israel. And so you have a situation where neither the Israeli people nor the Palestinian people are in a place where it makes sense. The idea of shoehorning a Palestinian entity of some sort in this current environment seems, again, ill-timed and unrealistic. But that being said, I understand the idea of trying to have some sort of horizon so that the future is brighter and that, again, the Israel and the Palestinians are not just pushed back to October 6th, that there's nothing positive that flows towards the future from the conclusion of this conflict.
Finally, you mentioned that you were here on October 7th. How do you look back at these 4 difficult and challenging months?
So I was here for Simchat Torah. I came in on Thursday, October 5th, and I remember I took the train from the airport and then the light rail into the Old City, which is where I was staying in the Rova. And I remember as we were on the light rail, we passed the Shuk, and it was bustling with activity. It's the last day of Chol HaMoed. It was bustling with activity. There were people everywhere and engaged, and there was so much energy. And then we went a little bit further down, and we were at Ben Yehuda, the pedestrian mall, and it seemed like every B'nai Akiva kid was there, and every Birthright kid, and it was these families. And I literally thought to myself as I was looking out the window, COVID is over, Israel is back. It was just so bustling with activity. And then I was in the Old City. I was at the Kotel on Shabbat, October 6th, and the joy and the celebration, dozens of
Simchat Torah at the Western Wall.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was on Friday, October 6th.
Wow.
The dancing, the celebration, the Torahs, and it was an amazing experience. And then the morning of October 7th, I woke up in the Jewish quarter to the sound of the sirens, and I changed, Israel changed, and it's been tremendously emotionally devastating for all of us. I think that there is nothing good that comes out of October 7th. However, the unity and the solidarity of the Israeli people, of American Jewry, is something that is palpable and a blessing. Within the Conference of Presidents, we have never been more agreeable than we are now. The support for the people of Israel, the support for the IDF is something that is tremendous. And having been here, providing hugs, giving hugs to Israelis has been incredibly fulfilling. And just as fulfilling has been the feeling from Israelis of love for the way that we've all been reacting. The sort of the hugs back have also been fulfilling. We are one people. October 7th, more than anything else, has crystallized that and focused that, and God willing, we will move forward from this as a stronger people.
Okay, William Daroff, CEO of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was my honor.